This train will stop at Martin Place, platform 4.
Hello, welcome to episode 1 of Sydney Metro Station Design. My name is Scott, I'm a public transport enthusiast, and I have about 7 years of public transport operations work experience. I've also studied town planning for a period of about 2 years full time, so I feel somewhat qualified to talk about the issues in this video. Of course, this is the internet and everyone can have their opinion whether it's right or wrong. But let's get into it. Today we'll be looking at the Martin Place metro station. So what is station design and why does it matter? Really, station design, what I mean by that is just the way the station is laid out to provide the best possible passenger experience. And I guess the question with that is what actually is a good passenger experience and what are the things that make that happen? So the first one that I think makes a good passenger experience is the station layout, and that's just from a railway operations perspective. Do the platforms have enough capacity to deal with the amount of passengers? Is there enough vertical transport like lifts and escalators to deal with the number of passengers? Are there appropriate facilities for the railway? So that's a very simple one from a design perspective. Another one is to do with the location and the entries to a particular station. Of course, when you're using a railway, you can only get into the trains by using stations. And so the location of the stations is very important to define the usefulness of the railway. And really, in this criteria, we want to be looking at whether the station is serving the land uses around it. And so, in the case of Martin Place later, it will be in the city, be serving a lot of office commutes. And also with the entries, depending on where the entries are, it can make a big difference as to whether the passenger experience is good or not. The third one is actually to do with access to the platforms from the station entries. And basically, we're just looking at how long does it take? Is it a nice, easy process? Do you have to walk down lots of long corridors? If you've got a wheelchair or a pram, do you have to take multiple lifts to get down to platform level, or is it a nice, easy single lift? Wayfinding within the station, is it simple to navigate? If you removed all the signage, is it obvious where you actually need to go to get to the trains or to get out of the station? And the signage, of course, itself, is it useful and in the right place? And lastly, interchange. Often railway stations are not the only thing that people are doing when they use it. They need to come off the bus maybe, or they're walking to the station, or they're cycling to the station, or they're changing off another railway line within the station. So thinking about the interchanges is very important for the passenger experience. And so we've got those 5 things, but let's just keep in mind that they all kind of relate to each other somewhat. Just going through each of them one by one is going to help us assess the station design of the Martin Place metro station. And so before we kind of move on, I also just want to say that I don't want this video to turn into me just bashing around the station designers and the builders of the station and trying to find everything wrong with it. Um, to the credit of those who were involved in the design and construction of the Martin Place metro station, it's a beautiful station and it's going to be well serving the people of Sydney for perhaps the next 100 years or more. And it was completed on time, and I think a lot of cities are going to be really envious of this station that we have. So well done to those who were involved with all that. Before we kind of get into the station layout, I thought a map would be helpful. And so I've made these maps on PowerPoint, so they might be a little bit dodgy or not to scale, but I think you'll get the idea. This is looking towards the west, so west is at the top of the screen, and you've got the original layout of the Martin Place Eastern Suburbs Railway Station. It is cut off at the bottom of the screen, but that's because our new metro platforms are going to come right across the middle. So there you've got the new running lines for the Sydney Metro and also the 2 platforms. The reason that they're spaced so far apart is because they actually run underneath Elizabeth Street for platform 3 and Castlereagh Street for platform 4. And we've got all the new internal passenger areas. They're in green, and you can immediately see for an underground station, it's got a lot of passageways. We'll add in the escalators as well. then the lifts, and there are also some toilets at platform level in the new metro area. And in the future, there's actually going to be another passageway that leads off to the right-hand side that's going to be north towards the new Hunter Street station, which is part of the Metro West project. So from a railway operations perspective, this station is just designed for pure capacity. It is absolutely huge. The platforms are really, really wide. You could probably fit a whole train's worth of people or more on each of the platforms. And this is a panorama that I took from inside the station, um, near the northern escalators that head to the northern entry. And I think you can see even just from this image how much space there is underground here. It's amazing how much dirt they must have moved to create this space underground. And I genuinely think you could probably fit more than 10,000 people at the platform level on this station, which means it's going to be really resilient. Big crowds, it's just going to swallow up super quick. That's probably comes really in handy on New Year's Eve and other big major events in the city. The other thing is that the vertical transport, like the escalators and the lifts, there are lots of them, and that's great. So there's high capacity to move people from the platform level to the street and vice versa. Also, it's really great that each of them come in pairs. So at all the escalator banks, there's at least 3 or 4 escalators, and all of the lifts, there are 2 of them, except for the interchange concourse. But what that means is that if one of them needs to be taken out of service due to a fault or just regular maintenance, a full level of access is still maintained at all points of entry. So that's a great design feature from a railway operations perspective. And another nice touch is that there are actually toilets at platform level. You can't quite see them in this image, but they're kind of just beyond where the escalators are in this picture looking towards the north. And so this is the current layout that we have in 2025, which is when I'm recording this video. That yellow arrow in the middle of the platform there was where we were looking from in the last image towards those escalators, closer to the northern end of the station, the right-hand side of the screen. And the next image is going to be from slightly behind where we were and looking the other way, so towards the south, and the next bank of escalators there. And that's just kind of what it looks like in the middle of the station between the platforms. So the location and entries to Martin Place, there's this really nice little map that I found inside the station, which is brilliant. And so if you work for the government and you're seeing this video, find whoever made this map. It's great. If they already work for the government, you should give them a pay rise. If they don't work for the government, you should try and hire them, because maps like this make everything so much easier when you're a passenger. This map was aligned correctly with the direction we were facing in the station, and so when you're reading the "you are here" dot in the middle of that map, you are already facing the correct direction to read the map. So brilliant map, I love it. But the location of the station, it's right in the what we'd call the finance core of the Sydney CBD. So a very busy commuter area of the city. From day one, the station was used by thousands and thousands of people, and I suspect that's only going to continue to grow. So in terms of land use around the station, it's a perfect place to put a station. There are other 2 entries, as you can see on the map. They're marked as the Hunter Street entrance and the Martin Place entrance, which are each side of the station respectively. So the next image is going to be from the Hunter Street entrance at street level, just inside the building above the station. We're going to be looking back towards the escalators that lead down toward the platforms. And so here we are with another panorama inside there. You've got the Hunter Street itself behind the camera, and then off to the right is Castlereagh Street, and off to the left is Elizabeth Street, with the stairs being necessary due to the kind of gradient of Hunter Street as being reasonably steep there, and a split level design. And you can see there are the escalators and the lifts that head further down into the station. And this is what it looks like from the kind of corner of Castlereagh and Hunter Streets. We've got a nice big M lollipop saying it's the metro station, and just under that Martin Place sign is where you walk through. You can kind of see the stairs from the previous image before. Now we're going to look from the other end. This is the Martin Place entrance, or the so-called Martin Place entrance, and we'll talk a bit about that later. So we'll be looking towards the bank of escalators that heads down to the southern station concourse. And another panorama, of course, straight down those escalators in the middle is the station entrance. You've got Castlereagh Street on the left and Elizabeth Street on the right, again with a split level design due to the height difference between the two streets. And you can see the escalators circled there in the middle, and the lifts here are actually off to the right hand side of where we're standing, and they stop at both levels before heading down to the station concourse. And the next picture is going to be from kind of outside the station on Martin Place, as in the street Martin Place, looking back towards the building over the southern entrance. And it looks like that. And I guess my question at this stage, when looking at the station entries, is why is there no entry on Martin Place itself? I think it's actually a bit confusing given that the station is called Martin Place, and yet from the new metro section of the station, there's actually no entrance on Martin Place itself. There are only entries on Castlereagh Street, Elizabeth Street, and the corners with Hunter Street as well. It is close to Martin Place, but it would have been really nice and simple to have the station concourse at the other side on the nice pedestrian area at the front. I think it would have been a bit more simple for passengers to understand where they are. All right, access to the platforms, and specifically how long does it take and how do we get there? I think the North Concourse is slightly better. It's two big escalators or two lifts. It seems pretty standard for big underground railway stations these days. The South Concourse is a little bit worse. You have to take three escalators or the same two lifts. And I've highlighted there the routes that you have to take to get down there. And I think you can see from the image that it's a little bit convoluted in its design. So from the north entrance on the left, when you go down the first big escalator, you then have to do a big backtrack before heading down the second escalators. And part of the reasoning for that is that the ticket gates are actually at that middle level. And this is the case on the right hand side in the south concourse as well. You have to go down a set of escalators and then backtrack all the way around before going down another set of escalators, and then you go through the ticket gates before heading down the final set of escalators on the right hand side. I wasn't able to capture the lifts in the same image at the South Concourse. It was a little bit more cramped. And I guess the question at this point in the video is that you can see they've dug out a nice big space at the Northern Concourse, and so why couldn't the lifts have gone straight to the street level? I think it would have made a much better passenger experience for those in prams or wheelchairs or just people who are less mobile. And I've got some theories as to why this is, which we'll address later in the video. Wayfinding. This is a big one for Martin Place. Ideally, station wayfinding should be, of course, simple and intuitive so that it's just very obvious where you need to go and how to get into and out of the station. And so I think the main positive with the wayfinding is the North Concourse, which is on the left-hand side here. There's natural light at the platform level, which is an excellent design feature, and credit to those who uh, brought that into the design with those nice big windows at the northern entrance at Hunter Street. It means during the daytime, if you're in the middle of the platform, you can immediately look up and naturally see where the exit is. You follow the daylight up through the North Concourse to get out of the station. On the negative side, there are lots of challenges with the wayfinding at this station, and so I'm going to discuss a few of the factors right now. This image on the right hand side is the Southern Concourse on Elizabeth Street. The first challenge with the wayfinding is just the overall complexity of the station. I think you would have seen just from the initial map, which we've got here on the screen again, that there are a lot of passageways in this station, and a lot of escalators and a lot of lifts, and a lot of different ways you could walk in circles here. And so that's going to pose challenges for any wayfinding. But the thing that really holds it back, I think, is that there's a lack of a clear sight line through the middle of the platform area at the metro platform level. And I wonder whether this perhaps could have been designed differently. But to show you what I mean, we're going to watch a little video walking through the middle of the station, and we're going to start at that point where the yellow arrow is facing towards platform 4. So here's the video now. I'll press play. So you can see we've turned around, and immediately we have to start dodging lifts and escalators on the way through. And then even here, you have to walk around this set of escalators to get to the transfer area between the old and the new. And could the design have looked any different? I think perhaps it could have if we went back to the drawing board. Of course, there were perhaps engineering considerations or other considerations that I'm not going to be aware of, but in another set of circumstances, perhaps these escalators at the south end could have been split like the ones at the northern end, and the lifts at the northern end could have been moved slightly out of the way. And what that would have allowed is that nice sightline right down the middle of the station, all the way from the transfer concourse at the southern end through to the future transfer point to the Hunter Street station. It would have made the wayfinding a whole lot more simple at the platform level, and passengers would have been able to see clearly where they needed to go all the way through the whole station. And so, of course, you can't really change these things now, but that's what I wonder is could this have been included in the original design to improve the wayfinding? And so, as a result of this complexity as well, there's some kind of misleading wayfinding outside the station. So, on the left, we've got a picture of that Elizabeth Street entrance to the southern concourse. And you can see there, it's actually got the lollipop for the trains, the orange T. And so, what that's saying is if you enter here, this is the way to the train platforms. And that's talking about the original Martin Place station platforms, platforms 1 and 2. And the yellow arrow in the second image on the right is the approximate position of where that picture was taken, facing back towards the camera. So if you're standing at that place where the yellow arrow is and you look towards the other side of the road, that's what you're seeing on the left hand side. And I'm saying that the orange T should not be where it is on the left hand image, because if you follow that, what you have to do is you're starting from where that red circle is. You have to walk into the station, down a set of stairs and escalators, and then back up another set of stairs before you even get into the same area that you would have got into just by going into that street level entrance off Martin Place. And if you don't know what I mean by that, go and visit the station yourself. Have a look at the entrance on Martin Place that's in the previous slide just here, and then try walking the other way through the new South Concourse. It's just the long way to go. The second wayfinding challenge is the integration with the overstation development. And what I'll say on this is that I think it's just a little bit too well integrated. It's really difficult to tell where the station kind of finishes and where the building above it begins. And because of this, it means that when you're at the street level, it's actually not super obvious where the station entrances are, because they just look like office buildings, the typical new high-rise office buildings with gigantic foyers and big public art. And so you also have at the north and south concourse level these big shopping arcades, and you have to march around to get to the next set of escalators past all these shops, which is undoubtedly part of the design. But it means that it does take longer to get up to the street level, and it's less obvious where you immediately need to go. And so here's that issue with what I was saying about the station entrances just looking like office buildings. This is the Elizabeth Street entry at the south end. If it weren't for the lollipops saying M and T, you'd have absolutely no idea that this was a railway station entrance. There are no ticket gates. There's no obvious sightline to escalators or a platform entry. There's not even any sign that says to the platforms or something to that effect. There's only this very small, non-standard wayfinding sign once you get there to tell you that the station entrance is down that set of stairs. And I think this is the case at a lot of the entrances for the new Martin Place metro station. Contrast that with the Gadigal station, the next station down the line. This is the Bathurst Street entry of that station, and this is the view from the curb. You look towards the station and you can immediately see the ticket gates and a big sign that says the platforms, and you immediately know that you've arrived at a railway station, and to get to the trains you have to go that way. And it's just a much more simple, intuitive design. You can just see where you need to go. The third challenge for wayfinding at Martin Place is, as I just mentioned, the non-standard Transport for New South Wales wayfinding. It's just an additional challenge for anyone who's never visited the station before. Transport have done a really good job at refreshing their wayfinding over the last 10 years or so, and it's become nice and standard across the network with nice big text filling up big signs showing you the way out or the way to the platforms or where the lifts are, etc. And oddly, in this image, you can see they've actually, for some reason, decided to keep using the old wayfinding signage for the lifts, and yet for the other signage, they've used a specific one for the building. And so it just adds another layer of complexity to the wayfinding design. And my question is, if you could use it for the lifts, why not just use it across the whole of the above station development at the public areas? The fourth challenge, which I think kind of just caps it all off, is that the station name and the exit names are a bit of an unfortunate crossover. And what I mean by that is that this railway station is called Martin Place, and the street above is also called Martin Place, as in the actual street. Now that the station has grown to be much bigger than it originally was, it's not immediately clear when you say Martin Place whether you're referring to Martin Place the street or Martin Place the station. And when you combine that with the fact that there isn't even an actual exit onto Martin Place, it just adds a whole another layer of complexity. You can see there it's telling you that buses from Martin Place leave from that direction. And again, none of the buses actually operate on Martin Place itself. Martin Place is just known as the terminus for that part of the city. And the same could be said for Hunter Street, as in the future Hunter Street metro station will be ahead from where we're looking in this picture, past those lifts in kind of the bottom left corner of the image. And they're going to need to work really hard on making it clear about which signage is for exits to Martin Place and Hunter Street, and which signage is referring to the station Hunter Street or Martin Place and the platforms at each of those stations. So a little bit of work to do there. But as a side note, I really love this Martin Place stencil on the wall on the right hand side. It's a really nice touch and it looks pretty cool in my opinion. Lastly, the interchanges. And here I think the main one is between the existing or former Martin Place railway station and the new metro platforms. And I wanted to finish on kind of a positive note here because this is excellent. This interchange is absolutely superb. I'm not sure I would have done it any differently. From that yellow arrow on the old platforms, the next picture is looking towards the transfer concourse, and you can see it comes right out into the platforms of the original Martin Place station. It's a nice simple escalator ride down to the next point here at the corner of the passageway, and you can see you come down those escalators and you walk up that short passageway and you're right there in the middle of the metro platform. So well done. This part of the design is excellent. And now looking back towards the transfer area from the metro platform side, this is what it looks like. My only criticism of this is just that there's no sign on that far wall saying platforms 1 and 2 this way, but otherwise superbly designed. It's very obvious how to get between the two platform areas. Talking about the buses, we are in the middle of the city and there are many, many services that run here at different times of the day. I just think the irony with the bus interchanges is that the bus stand H, which I've circled in red just there, is the most convenient interchange out of all the bus stops. You can quite easily get there from the southern concourse exit onto Castlereagh Street, but it's ironic that this stop is only used during weekday PM peak hour for the express services to the eastern suburbs. So perhaps a bit of a fail there. But again, these are buses coming from the middle of the city. It's quite a small proportion of passengers that are going to be using this station to interchange with buses. So it's not really a major concern that the bus stops are all over the place. And considering the volume and variety of destinations with the bus services, it would have been nearly impossible to consolidate these all into a neat bus interchange anyway. So I just thought I'd mention it to make sure that we talk about the bus interchanges. To kind of wrap that all up, we started this video by saying, what is station design? Why does it matter? It's to do with creating the best possible passenger experience and the way that the station is laid out. So the passenger experience at Martin Place metro station, what was it like? It's designed for very high passenger capacity, and this is great from a rail operations perspective. The station's going to be able to remain open even under extremely high passenger loads. The station is also designed really nicely to implement a one-way in-out system for major nights like New Year's Eve, where the station will be at crush capacity. So this station is really well designed from that perspective, and well done to the team that's behind that. The location, excellent location, right in the CBD office core, capturing a lot of commute trips to and from work. Also well located in the northern end of the city, away from the existing Wynyard station, which was really the alternative from the north side of Sydney to get to that office core in the northern section of Sydney CBD. And the entry points are satisfactory. I did say earlier that it would have been nice to have an entrance on Martin Place, but certainly the entrances at the south off Elizabeth Street and Castlereagh Street, they do the job. Access to the platforms, somewhat convoluted at this station. Um, you require kind of a forced march around of the little shopping concourses underneath both the north and south entry points, which is a bit of a drawback in the passenger experience because it increases the time it takes to get to the platforms. It also means that you can't ride a single lift from the street level all the way to the platform level, which certainly would have been possible with the station being as big as it is and taking up an entire city block. The wayfinding, I think the wayfinding was generally poor at Martin Place Station, and that's a bit of a disappointment considering the amount of money it would have uh, taken to build this station and the potential that it had to really be a lot more simple. It's not aided by the issues I discussed just before, just the general complexity, the non standard wayfinding at street level, and just the fact that you need to go through the shopping arcades to get to the street level. It reduces the legibility of the station. But there is an excellent interchange between the Eastern Suburbs Railway and the new metro platforms. This is nearly perfectly done. I'm not sure it could have been done any better in reality. It's a great functional transfer which enables efficient movement of people between the two lines at really high volumes. So that's great. I thought we'd finish off by talking about the unsolicited proposal by Macquarie Group, which resulted in them being the chief designers and deliverers of the station and the overstation development, which I think really, when you know these details, a lot of the design decisions in this station are going to make a lot more sense. And so the short version is that the Macquarie Group approached the state government of New South Wales and said, we want to build this station and we want to build it like this because the Macquarie Group actually were operating or owning the building immediately above. And you can see in that diagram, number 50 Martin Place, that was already their building. And so they said, we'll build under it and around it as well with a new integrated station development. If you want to read those dot points I've included as part of the official government press release, you can do so. But I think the key one is that the government must have been keen to increase the commercial viability of the site by including the shopping arcades. And I think that's evident in the way that they've talked about this opportunity to deliver a world class transport, commercial, retail, and dining precinct in the heart of Sydney CBD. However, my fear is that with this being a big focus, part of the passenger experience has kind of been left behind. And the integration with the building above, while it's great, has actually come at the expense of the experience of passengers who just want to get to the street level and get to other areas of the city. In the next slide here, what I'm going to do is show what I think could have been done if the unsolicited proposal was less concerned with providing new shopping arcades and more concerned with optimum passenger experience for everyone using the station. And so one of those things is just that the South Concourse is about there on the diagram. And I was wondering why there was no direct connection from the South Concourse to the Eastern Suburbs rail platforms. I understand perhaps engineering considerations may have made this impossible, but given the wayfinding with the lollipops on the Elizabeth Street and Castlereagh Street entries of the new South Concourse, I thought it's a bit misleading, and having a set of escalators to those platforms would have actually made that legitimate wayfinding and would have improved access and circulation through the station. The other thing which I mentioned earlier was just providing a clear sight line through the middle of the station, which I'm sure could have been done if it was a priority. And here's a slightly different view of the station from the side. This diagram is taken from the station precinct design plan, and so that's showing the south concourse on the left. You need to take 3 escalators or 2 lifts to get to the platform level. You can see the red or orange areas in there are the unpaid areas of the station, so that includes the shopping arcades or anywhere you can walk up to without going through ticket barriers. And the green areas at the bottom, they are the platform areas or the areas behind the ticket gates. And so the left, yes, 3 escalators or 2 lifts, and the right hand side, 2 escalators and also 2 lifts. And so considering that the station took up pretty much a whole city block. I think that's just a little bit disappointing, and that with a few changes at the design level, it could have been a much better passenger experience. And what I mean by that is I'll show you in the next couple slides, is that if at the south concourse on the left we took out one of the escalators, the big long escalator could have just been a little bit longer, and then that would have meant that we wouldn't have had to stuff around with going around the shopping arcade. The concourse could have extended right up to street level in the paid area, which would have meant that the ticket barriers would have been at the street corner. It would have been immediately obvious that you were entering a station, and you would have reduced the amount of escalators down to the platform by one. What that also would have meant is that you could have actually had a single lift shaft or a single bank of lifts that could have gone all the way from the street level through to the concourse level at the south and all the way through to platform level at the new metro platforms. And even I think that perhaps if it was aligned correctly, could have even also made a stop off at the Eastern Suburbs Railway platforms. And that would have been absolutely optimum for a single lift ride for those in wheelchairs and prams and carrying bags and all sorts to get from the street level to all platforms and all concourses and all street exits using just a single lift shaft. It's far more simple. It improves the passenger experience a lot. So I'm perhaps a bit disappointed that that wasn't the case here. And what we also could have done was, of course, provide those escalators from the South Concourse through to the Eastern Suburbs rail platforms. Now, at the north end, a similar thing. The escalator layout is not ideal for quick access to the platforms because you have to do that big long backtrack past all the shops. And again, when we consider all the shops that are in there, the design choice makes a lot of sense. But I think to improve the passenger experience, what could have been done instead is that if this escalator here was flipped around to provide a switchback arrangement, this would have reduced the walking distance from the street to the platform. And this also would have meant that what we could do is, if we ignore the shopping arcade, is actually have the ticket gates at street level again, so that it's nice and obvious where you need to get to the station and enter to find the trains. And same as the South Concourse, this would have meant we could have had a single lift that went all the way from the street level straight to the platforms. This would have just been much more optimum for passengers than the current arrangement, which requires two lifts. But the good news is that some of this could actually be rectified with reasonably minor works. And so I'm going to suggest an improvement to the northern concourse lifts. You can see here there's a lot of space there. They could reasonably simply be extended up to the street level, which is that well lit area at the top. And what this might look like from here is just that at the northern entry, the lifts would come out about there where I've put in those yellow blocks. And to make this work with kind of the ticket gate line and the paid area of the station, I would suggest that the lifts at the street level would not have ticket gates at them, but at the middle level, we'd need to mess around a bit with the ticket gates to provide an unpaid area from the lifts to the shopping arcade. And so what that might look like is something like this, where you knock out those ticket gates where the red X is and just build a little fence along both sides so that people can get to and from that level of the station without needing to go back in or out of the ticket gates. And then at the platform level, the bottom of these two lifts, this is looking towards the south, but this is at the north side of the station, could have just built a simple set of ticket gates here to mean that people are entering the station at this point from the lifts. And I think these improvements, they won't be that expensive compared with the overall cost of delivering the station. And again, it would have just made a much better passenger experience for those with access challenges. So that kind of brings us to a close on this episode 1 of Sydney Metro Station Design. I hope you liked the video. If you've got any thoughts on the things that I've said or some of the design challenges, maybe you were involved with this project or you know some things that I don't, please drop a comment down below. And I'd love some suggestions on which other stations we can look at in this series and some of the other things we can talk about. But of course, at the end, I just want to restate that I'm very impressed with the Martin Place Metro Station. By all accounts, it's going to be servicing the people of Sydney for a long time to come, and it's going to do its job really well from a railway operations perspective. So well done to the designers. It's a great station, and I'm very happy that it got built the way it did. So that's all for today. Thanks very much for watching. Um, yeah, see you later.
This train terminates at this station. All passengers, please leave the train here.